This video shows you how to deploy a model using Cloudera Data Science Workbench. Using this feature, you can simply select a Python or R function within a project file, and CDSW will deploy it to a REST API that can serve predictions. Let's take a look at how this process works. You start by selecting a function, any function within a project file. This is the function that will be invoked when the model is called. For a typical machine learning project, this is usually the predict function that accepts an input and then returns a prediction based on the model's parameters. Once you've selected your file and function, CDSW creates a Docker image that includes a snapshot of your project code, model parameters from training, and all of the dependencies you've specified in the build script. We call this artifact the model build. CDSW will then deploy this build to a REST endpoint that accepts JSON arguments as input. This should make your model callable from nearly any language. For this demo, we're going to create a very simple model that accepts two numbers as input and returns their sum. Let's start with a pre-existing project called add2numbers. We'll be using this addNumbers Python script. Like all model functions, it takes a single JSON argument as input and returns the sum of the numbers as output. We always recommend that you test your code in the Workbench before actually turning it into a model. This would be the fastest way to discover if there are any glitches in your code, such as typos or syntax errors. So let's do that first. Launch a Python session and run the script. Now call the add function directly from the Workbench command prompt. We can see that the function returns the sum of the numbers as expected. Now let's turn this code into a model. Go back to the project overview page and click Models. Click New Model. Give this model a name and description. Then enter details about the model build. In this case, we want to use the addNumbers Python script and invoke the add function within that script. Enter sample input and output in JSON. While these samples are not required, you'll see why they're helpful later on when we're testing this model. Select your kernel and computing resources and how many replicas you want to deploy for load balancing. Then click Deploy Model. Click on this model to go to its overview page. Click Builds. Here, you can track live progress as CDSW builds the Docker image for this model. As part of the build process, CDSW will also install any dependencies you've specified in the build script. For such a simple example though, we didn't really need any extra dependencies. If you run into any trouble during the build stage, the log on this screen is usually the best place to start debugging. Once the build is complete, CDSW will deploy this model as a REST API. Now that the model has been deployed, let's test it out. The model overview page provides you with a widget that you can use to test calls to the model. It has been pre-populated with the sample input we provided when creating the model. The same overview page also includes code samples in Shell, Python, and R that can be used to test calls to the model. It is worth noting that as your resource requirements change, you can go to the deployments page to redeploy the same build with more or less computing resources and replicas as needed. Moreover, if you've deployed a new model build and those changes don't work out for you, you can always roll back to an older version. Each active model also has an associated monitoring page where you can see basic metrics and logs for each replica, such as how many requests have been received, if there have been any errors, and their standard out and standard error logs. If you're having any trouble deploying a model or tracking down exceptions with active models, this page should be your first stop for troubleshooting. If at any point you want to stop the model from serving any more requests, just click Stop. This will also release any resources that are being consumed by the model. That is the end of this demo. For more information on model deployment in CDSW, please refer the documentation. Thank you.